Everybody, welcome to the Landcast. This is Brandon Chasteen. I'm here with Jeremy Chasteen. How's it going, Jeremy?
Pretty good. How about you, Brandon?
It's going great. I'm doing great. The world's doing fine, I think.
Could be better. Could be better.
It could be. One of the things we found with our company is, so as we talked about, Jeremy, is we started as landmen, right?
That's right.
And so we kind of have heard your story. People have kind of heard my story through hearing yours, but we got started in the Barnett Shale, which is in Fort Worth, Texas. And eventually I made my way up here to Bloomington, Indiana because of graduate school. I thought I was going to get out of the land service industry, but just when you think you're going to get out, it pulls you back.
That's right. That's right. If you didn't quote it, I was.
Yeah. And here I am. We're running a land service company together. One of the interesting things is we started as landmen, and so we were supposed to be oil and gas guys. That's what we were going to do. Natural gas, oil, coal. And then the big crash happened, and we didn't quite know what was going to happen. And so we diversified. This podcast is kind of, I guess, an output of that. The fact that we've diversified, and now we are into all sorts. We have our fingers in lots of different pies in the land world. So when we think of land service, what do you think of when you hear of the word land services, Jeremy?
I know what I think of it. I think of our industry. I think a lot of people, when they hear it, think we probably mow yards or something like that.
We don't do that.
Which is further from the truth.
That.
Yep. But
couldn't it be further from the truth?
Yeah, I think when most people hear land services, they actually have no idea what to think when they hear about, maybe because we have the wonderful show Landman, they may have an idea of what a landman is now if they've seen the show or know anything about it. The vast majority of people have no idea what land services actually means.
Well, that's an interesting place. So if we're going to compare and contrast, so for those who don't know, I moved up to Bloomington, Indiana to be an English major. I was going to get my PhD to teach English literature. That's what I was going to do.
Yep.
And instead, I'm now a landman again. And one of our favorite things to do when we're teaching English literature to freshmen at the college level is to teach them how to compare and contrast. And so what do you think of the representation that Jeremy and I were bored one day. We were together in a hotel and we watched the first episode, or like maybe even just the first 15 minutes of Landman. And
I think we finished the whole first episode.
Did we? We may have.
I think so.
But what do you think of the representation of land?
Of the TV show?
Of what we actually are, of who we are.
When you're dealing with acquisitions or leasing and stuff, you do run into some pretty interesting, scary situations depending on the people. So, but I doubt very many landmen are getting kidnapped by the cartel and tortured. Doubt that that's true. There was a time, like you were saying, things drastically changed probably right around the time that we were starting our company. But even before that, they had started to change in that, an old school landman was somebody who they did everything from beginning to end. They were focused primarily on oil and gas. Some in, depending on the area that you're in, coal as well. But in oil, they were focusing on doing the title, going and getting the lease. But then from there, they were dealing with permitting the wells. They were going to the actual, they were walking out. I got to do some of this in northern Illinois, where you're going out with surveyors to stake where the well is going to get drilled or a test well is going to get drilled. You're assisting with them to file permits. You're testifying if you need to do any forced pooling. So you're pretty much from beginning to end helping with the drilling of a well or the drilling for gas or getting, the land for a coal project. Today, it's much different. You've got companies that specialize in, and I would say we are a land service company. We don't just do title, even if that is kind of what we do. The majority of our work has been. But there are companies where it's like all they do is title. All they do is acquisitions. We get projects all the time from acquisition companies because that's not where they're strong at. for the most part, I would say that landman is like anything else. Is it Tyler Sheridan? I believe is his name. Has done is very soap opera ish. So it's it's trying to give you a good story when the day to day of what we do is actually sometimes quite boring and
quotidian,
repetitive.
normal, everyday. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there can be some interesting stuff even in that.
Yeah.
I mean, so you have the idea of the landman that's popularized now by that show, which is that you are out there doing something related to these energy companies, but especially drilling, and somehow the cartel's involved. But really, a landman is what? I mean, a landman is someone who goes to courthouses, researches the minerals, and then knows who to go and try to lease on behalf of an oil company, a coal company, and then they also know the permitting standards for the state, right?
Yep.
In other words, they're a liaison between the company who's trying to do the active exploration of the minerals and the landowner. That is that's the historic definite, like who a landman is.
Yep.
And as our company has grown and we've tried to get into other things, I mean, we've seen other aspects of the land service industry as well, and it's really fascinating. I mean, there's lots and lots of different careers out there for anyone who wants to be in the land world. It's not just a landman. You can be an abstractor. And we know great abstractors, Jim.
Yep.
Here in Monroe County.
We should get that guy on here.
We should reach out to him. Jim, if you're listening, we want to get you on the show. But what they do is they go and they're representing a mortgage company or a title insurance company, and they're putting together an abstract of title. But all these things are interrelated in the way they work and what they're doing and the resources they're using. And the large part of that is the courthouse, right?
Yep.
On my end, I was an English major. I loved, writing and reading and poetry and all that stuff. And so one of the things nerd. One of the things that attracted me about this industry is the stories behind the land. Like you have all these different stories that you get to be a part of as you're putting together your abstract of title. In fact, we have a class we taught to the Indiana Land and Title Association called, the story of title? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, something like that.
Basically, one of the things we tell our landmen as they're starting is that you are dealing with real people, not just who own the land. You are dealing with real people who own the land. You're also dealing with real people at the courthouse. You're always dealing with people and the way that they're trying to put the transactions into a way that you can then go and inquire. That sounds abstract, but what it means is that you have a person who goes and tells the recorder, "Here's the land I'm selling." You have the person who comes and tells the recorder, "Yeah, indeed, they're selling that to me." You have the recorder who then tries to take a record of that, and sometimes they're lazy and they make a mistake, and that poses problems to us, right?
Or somebody else made a mistake.
Or somebody else made a mistake in the legal description or in the dates, whatever it might be, right? There might be these errors that take place. Sometimes there's not. Maybe this person dies and forgets to probate his will, and then you have to figure out where all his interest went after that.
Yep.
You have these records nowadays, which are great for us, like Ancestry.com, which have really helped the industry. I wonder if somebody from Ancestry.com would be willing to be on our podcast.
Maybe. You should reach out.
But the point I'm making and have been making, I think, since we started this episode is that we diversified and realized that this is a huge industry.
Yep.
That there are lots of different aspects to it, right? And that diversification has really opened us up to all sorts of things. I now am on this piece of property that has a cave on it, and through that, I've gotten involved with the Indiana Karst Conservancy. Conservation, they're very interested in land, and they use our skills. The school that my kids go to, I help them on their one of their committees. Right?
Yep.
Because everybody's interested in land. Everybody, that's like one of the American experiences is land.
Yep.
So you can't get much more American or basic than land. And so the Landcast, we're never going to run out of episodes. We've got so many people we can talk to.
And like you were saying earlier, just like stories and, that you read. Not every story is great or you really care to go back to ever again. There are titles that we do that are like that. You know, you never want to go back to that. You never want to do that again. But then there are some where it is truly fascinating to see the changes throughout time. You know, I can think of the one where that we did a few years ago. We were doing a patent to present up in northern Indiana, and some of our employees did it, and they came back and they had some confusion because basically there were two patents issued. So a patent, for those who don't know and are listening, a patent is the original deed for the land. It's either issued by the U.S. government. So if you get a patent and it's from the government, you'll see the president of the United States is the one who signed it and gave it to the first landowner of that piece of property. Sometimes they're issued by the state. Sometimes they're issued by railroads, canals. It just depends. But anyways, on this particular property, there were two patents for the same piece of land. And they were like, how could that be? Well, I was thinking, yeah, how could that be? You guys are just messing something up. So then we started looking into it. And basically what had happened was this guy, a group of guys, it was like him and 3 or 4 other people, started buying land complete all the way around a giant lake. And because you have certain rights as far as water is concerned, I can't remember off the top of my head what those rights are called. I should. But anyways, you have rights to maintain the water that's coming up onto your land. So what they did was, since they had those rights and they had it all around the lake, they started to drain the lake. They started digging ditches, and they ultimately drained the entire lake and went in and basically demanded that they basically said that they were the owners, because as the water went away, they kept coming in. It ended up turning into a dispute. You know, this land, a lot of people were like, no, you guys have no right to this land. So you had groups from Chicago coming down and this group that was already there. And they're like having standoffs. Like, you can read about this. When the Chicago group came in, they were met by this group of guys all on horseback with their guns, telling them to get out of our land, you know, and stuff like that. And ultimately the U.S. government had to step in and make a decision on who gets the land and, you know, and stuff like that. But those are some of the things that actually happen, you know. We're doing one right now where it used to be farmland. Now it got sold to the U.S. government to be one of the biggest military bases in Indiana during its time, called the Proving Grounds down in Jefferson County, Indiana. And today it's owned by number of people, but it's still big. And if you look at the GIS, you can see, you know, runways where, you know, and now it's going to be partitioned off to become a data center. So this land went from farm to being a military base, and now will be a data center. More than likely, we'll see what happens. But so those are just some of the, you know, every piece of land, like you said, tells a story. It gives you history. It's the story of what happened with it. Some of them are fun. Some of them are cool. Some of them are very boring. Some of them are very difficult, but they all do tell a story. That is a fun aspect of abstracting.
And we've worked in plenty of counties, so we've seen a lot of those stories. I remember one. So a lot of these old parcels, they would have a tract set aside for school grounds.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so we were in Jasper County in Illinois, and one of this brother decided he didn't want to give up his ancestral grounds to the rest of his siblings. And so he decided to squat inside this schoolhouse with a shotgun and refused to let any of his siblings come anywhere near the schoolhouse. So there was this huge file regarding the heirship of this land and how the sheriffs had gone out to the schoolhouse, had tried to get him out, you know, and all the complications that had arisen because of that. And so,
did he end up getting the land?
No, he ended up getting kicked out because of that.
Poor guy.
Yeah, it was kind of sad for them.
Well, and even then, I mean, and this doesn't happen all the time, but it happens a lot more than people would think. But, you know, you get to see some fairly interesting things one example, I'm talking about documents in general. There's a variety of ways that people transfer property to one another. You can have your clean warranty deed, you can have a quick claim deed, etc. But sometimes people keep their land and they die with it still in their possession. Just a little bit of technical jargon here. You've got in most states, you've got an office in the county that deals with real estate transfers. In Indiana, it's the recorder. Illinois, it can be the clerk recorder. And they deal with real estate. They deal with land. And then we've got other offices that we deal with, and one of them is the clerk. And that's where you would get things like probates and wills. And so one of the ways that people transfer their interest in land is through probate, through wills. And those are not always in the recorder's office. So sometimes you have to go and, dig through old clerk records to find the answer of how did this property go to, this guy had 6 kids and it only went to one of them. How did that happen? And you'll find it in the will. He gave a one piece to one kid, and the piece you're looking at, he gave to another kid.
Yeah.
But in some of those wills can be super fascinating and funny. You'll get to see some of the bitterness, I guess, that comes out in life. So you'll oftentimes see this dad giving, his daughter, all of his money. He's giving this son his 40-acre tract, and then his third son, he gives a penny. Mm-hmm. And right there that he just did not like that third son. Or you'll hear it'll be like this dad gives, or this person gave all of his estate to, I literally had this happen. He left all of his estate to the J.R.R. Tolkien Foundation, and then he left a penny to each one of his kids. And
really,
it's like
the J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah, J.R.R. Tolkien Foundation.
Huh.
So it's just funny. You get to see these weird, in documents, you get to see these weird things that happen, but we get to see them. Or you'll run across, I was mentioning earlier to you that I would bring it up. You get to see sometimes some really weird things like, first, here in Monroe County, where we are, Bloomington, Indiana, they're in the recorder's office in the miscellaneous books. I have it written down somewhere which book and which page. We have the first chapter of Gone with the Wind Part 2. Somebody took the time in the 60s or 70s to write the first chapter of a sequel to Gone with the Wind. And then so you have weird things like that. I mean, you can record anything you want.
They thought that was publishing, basically.
Yeah. Or they wanted it to live on forever, and it is. It'll be there forever.
And
didn't you find a deed that was like written as a poem?
Yeah, actually, I have it up right now. That's what I was looking for it. And so we kind of transitioned away from. So this is a broad, just diverse world to be in as far as the industry goes.
Yeah, and I will say, I think we talked a little bit last time about some of the exciting things maybe we didn't. If we didn't, you'll get to hear plenty of them at some point. A lot of times I think people think that leasing is like the fun, exciting part of the land service industry. You're running into people, you might get killed, you might get kidnapped by the cartel. And that they think that the abstracting side is for nerds. It is a little bit. But there's still some really fun things you get to see that nobody else gets to. Sorry, but go ahead.
No, yeah. So this episode's kind of becoming, here's the diversification. This is what it led us to and how.
Yeah.
But also at our root, we have our fingers in lots of different pies, right? We've our toes dipped in lots of different waters. Whatever metaphor you want.
It's enough metaphors.
Yeah.
They get it.
But we do a lot of abstracting. That's what we do. And so this is kind of becoming a love letter to abstracting. One of the great joys of abstracting is getting to go to all the courthouses.
Yep.
If you like to travel, if you like to see small towns, some bigger towns, but I mean, Chicago is one of the wildest places to run title. Yeah. It is wild. The bigger the town, probably the more miserable the title. The smaller the town, you can see some really interesting things. And if you're open to it, it can be a great job, a great experience. You get to travel. One of my favorite things in the summer is to drive to these small courthouses with my windows down.
Yep.
And you get to smell the fields and get the sun on your face and all that. And then you get to these small counties and you get the local people and the local flavors. But this is Cass County, Illinois, Beardstown. This was by a guy named the Honorable J. Henry Shaw, and he decided to record a deed as a poem. And so maybe I should just read the deed.
Do it.
J. Henry Shaw to Charles E. Wyman. I, J. Henry Shaw, the grantor herein, who live at Beardstown, Cass County within, for $700 to me paid today, to Charles E. Wyman, do sell and convey, Lot 2 and Block 40, said county and town, where Illinois River flows placidly down, and warrant the title forever, and I, waiving homestead and mansion to both a goodbye, and pledging this deed as valid in law, I add here my signature, J. Henry Shaw. And then I think even the notary seal is in poem, in verse. I, Sylvester Emmons, I think, who live at Beardstown, a justice of peace of same and renown of the county of Cass in Illinois state, do certify here that on this same day, one J. Henry Shaw to me did make known that the deed above in name were his own, and he stated he sealed and delivered the same voluntarily, freely, and never would claim his homestead therein, but left all alone, turned his face to the street and his back to his home.
Oh, it's beautiful. Now that we do closings, actually, we could
enforce
ask one of our lawyers to give her just a format that we want all our deeds written in. You're a poet. You're a published poet.
Oh yeah,
you could do it.
I could do it. But yeah, so you get to find all these interesting things about the local courthouse, the local flavor of the town. What's that town up in Clinton County? I think it's Frankfort, Indiana, where they have their Frankfurter festival every year. You get those sorts of things. You get to meet the strange people. And we have stories, I'm sure, that we could tell about all the people we've met.
You met somebody in Illinois that was doesn't he owned the entire state of Illinois? Isn't that what he was trying to say?
That was in Springfield. I was there doing a search in Sangamon County, and the heir to the Queen of Illinois came to the recorder's office to try and stake his claim. Yep.
Did they give it to him?
No, they did not. They escorted him out of the building.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said that he was the great grandson of this person, and that she had every right to the whole state, and therefore he
gave it to him. Yeah. Oh, makes sense.
Yeah, therefore he had every right to the whole state. Yeah.
Seems logical to me.
I mean, any other stories or anything like that you've seen in a courthouse?
You and I both could go on for a long time about the different or funny stories, difficult stories, whatever, funny people that we've either worked with or been with. There are frustrating people that you have to deal with in courthouses. Courthouses can sometimes tends to be the bigger courthouses where you have to deal with people who are not quite as friendly as others. I mean, I was attacked by a bat once. Not really, but it felt like I was being attacked by a bat. The bat and I definitely had like a standoff for a moment before it went and hid somewhere and I got out of the room. I mean, I think I may have mentioned it last time, but I mean, if you start leasing, you get tons of interactions with some interesting people. I feel like our industry, more than others, really attracts eclectic people. I'm thinking of which we should get this guy on here, the Waz, who we worked with down in northern Kentucky.
Great guy.
Yeah, great guy. But very eclectic. He had at some point made his own. He had patented his own pizza box, which was being used in our producer's, not his hometown, but his current city of Evansville. He had I can't remember which pizza shop was using it, but this is his claim. He had also developed an awesome design for a table that had fans. I don't exactly understand it, but he had patented it, and it had like fans on each corner of the table for people to adjust and keep cool. Anyways, so you get to meet a lot of cool people. You get to meet you also get kind of a good feel for, like, I especially think of my time up in northern Illinois when I was working up there. You get to kind of realize that small town America is still really, it's just nice. People are nice. People are kind. People, when you think about Illinois, you may think of Chicago, and the rest of the state is not like Chicago at all. There's just tons of good people, and that are just, they're farmers. They work with their hands. They want their kids to do well. They want to have a family. They want to kind of be left alone and be able to live in their city. And it is a unique job in that sense, that you get to go all over. I've worked in 6 or 7 states at this point. So you get to kind of go all over the world, A landman used to. This is changing too. I mean, think about it, every industry is changing in some ways similarly. COVID really changed things for acquisition, where, I'm not saying that acquisitions guys don't go out knocking on doors, but they definitely don't start with that. Used to, you would just go and you would show up and try to get a conversation going with the landowner, show them the lease, explain it to them. Now you're sending out mail first, sending out mailers, seeing if you can get callbacks. And today, there's counties that technically you and I will never have to step foot in, because they've got all of their records from patent to present, everything right on the computer. And so you don't have to go. So that's changed.
And that will. And speaking of change, that does change a bit of even what we used to do. Like I'm just still looking through our old Instagram, and we have a lot of pictures on here of all the things that we got to do and see, all the courthouses. One of the things, if you love architecture, a lot of beautiful courthouses, the domes have these wonderful
stained glass.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Stained glass. You get to see the Carnegie libraries, things like that. I mean, I don't know if people here are aware, but the Carnegie Foundation, great philanthropic adventures, would give a lot of money to these these local counties to build libraries. And so you had these limestone libraries in all these small little counties that were founded and funded by the Carnegie Foundation. You see things like that. You see these railroads. You see these beautiful rural barns and fields and sunsets and all these things that you just, you get to experience these things, and it's wonderful. You get to see the whole state. You get to see these states you're in. And since you brought that up, as we move more towards things being digital, that's one of the things we're going to start losing. And it is sad. So we talked, when you were kind of telling your story, Jeremy, you said that the idea of a landman has really changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
What it was when we first started, it's even changed. It had even changed and was kind of in the twilight of its what it meant to be a landman when we started. And I think what it means to be an abstractor, what it means to be a title researcher, is going to change as we move away from a title searcher needing to be the person who's at a courthouse versus the person who just knows how to query these things online. It's going to really change a lot of what makes, at least what made the job unique. It'll be its own. It'll change. It'll just be different. And that's a part of the way things are. But like, there may be a time where you don't have to go to Lake County. And then, like for us, it's almost a taste memory. When you go to Lake County, Indiana, you go to the Albany's gummy factory and you bring back gummies for the kids.
Yep.
There's probably going to be a day where you don't have to go to Lake County. You can just do it from here. And so there's going to be the loss of being at the courthouse, seeing these buildings, seeing these places. And so I guess one of the things as we, start doing this podcast and telling these stories is we're going to kind of become a historical memory of what this job was and what this job is becoming.
We've talked about what a landman is and what it has been traditionally, but where do you think it's going to, where do you think the industry is heading? I mean, from all standpoints, from being an abstractor to doing acquisitions to, most landmen don't do surveying, so we'll wait and hold off and ask a professional surveyor where they think their industry's heading. As you're talking about digitization, and we've built our own software and are using AI quite a bit. I think AI will change the industry. I'm not exactly sure how it'll change acquisitions, but I definitely think it'll change title. A lot of your simple searching, 20-year searches or something like that, are going to be done by a bot within the next year or two, or a current owner for sure. I mean, if it's all right there and it can be queried by a human, it can be queried by a bot, AI. And if it's typed and legible, then it really can read it well. I'm not saying that everybody, everybody who only does 20-year searches should be panicked, but some of them should be. But because it's still going to require a human to come in and verify, but it may not be, it may be that these title companies like us, don't use people to do current owners. We use a bot to do current owners, and the bot sends us the information back. But I don't know what digitization will look like. I know that, what 10, 20 years ago, it's still not cheap to digitize records, but it has become a lot cheaper as we've built better scanners that you can lay a book on, and it scans this page, then it has a little arm that flips the page, scans the next page, right, etc. So I don't know. It's just interesting to think, like, where will the industry go as technology and the world change?
I mean, we've seen it changing, and that's kind of what we were saying. Even in our, our social media from the past, we've now had this Instagram for almost 10 years, and we used to be in the field a lot. Our guys are still in the field quite a bit. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I do think it'll change more as we get more digitized. Like just today, we found out another courthouse that we could just completely research from here. And what that'll mean for title abstracting, I don't know. What will it mean for land? Nothing, because it's not like the bot. We're not going to enter the matrix. The land is still going to exist, right?
Yep.
And so the need for people who specialize in the land, for people who understand the land, for these transactions, for this industry is not going to disappear. It's just going to change. It's going to adapt.
Yep.
And it's exciting and a little scary, I know, to think about that future, but who knows? Yep. We're in sci-fi territory there in some ways. But as we think about it, what we do know is that this land industry, it's been here for a long time. And you talked about patents earlier. Those earliest patent owners, they had no idea how the transactions would be tracked and accounted for nowadays, but they did know that the land wasn't going anywhere, right?
Yep.
And if the land goes somewhere, then we're gonna be in dire straits ourselves.
Yeah.
Yep. So as long as the land is here, there's a need for this industry and for the stories about the land, and that's kind of what this podcast is about. If you have stories that you want to tell about your relationship with the land, your involvement with this industry, let us know. Reach out to our wonderful producer, Nathan Alberson, and we'll get you on here and you can tell your stories. Anyways, Jeremy, it's been fun talking.
It's been a pleasure, Brandon. Like always.
Like always. It's Brandon Chasteen, Jeremy Chasteen. We'll catch you next time here on the Landcast.
The Landcast is a production of Chasteen Land Title. For uncompromising accuracy in land work across oil and gas, commercial, telecom, energy, and more, check us out at ChasteenLand.com. If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave us a review and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us each week as we keep telling the stories of the land industry.